There are a lot of active duty military personnel permanently assigned to the White House Military Office in a variety of roles. The crew of Air Force One and Marine One, sentries at the door of the West Wing and South Lawn, drivers of Cadillac One, doctors assigned to the medical unit, and mid-grade officers who carry the football, the satchel that contains the nuclear codes. There are also a number of U.S. Navy personnel who man the White House mess that provides meals for the President and the First Family, as well as for large and important events like state dinners. And in the ranks of these chefs for 9 years was a sailor named Walt Nauta. Born and raised in Guam, Nauta completed boot camp at Great Lakes near Chicago just 2 weeks after the 9/11 terror attacks. After being rated as a mess specialist, MS, which was changed to culinary specialist, CS, in 2004, he went on to serve at naval stations in California and Georgia, as well as aboard the aircraft carrier USS John F. Kennedy, CV-67, and the frigate USS Taylor, FFG-50. He received orders to the White House mess in 2012 during President Obama's second term, and he stayed on when President Trump took over. At some point during Trump's time in office, Nauta was moved out of the kitchen to assume duties as one of the president's two valets. The White House also has butlers, but the valets work with the president more directly. And in Nauta's case, his tasks included serving President Trump's meals, keeping his glass charged with Diet Coke, picking up his dry cleaning, and standing outside the Oval Office when the president hosted important meetings. Trump even trusted Nauta enough to let him pick out the tie he wore each day. Shortly after Nauta became a valet, he was promoted to Senior Chief Petty Officer, which is the second highest rank an enlisted man can hold in the U.S. Navy. Senior Trump aides have described Nauta as a reserved and unassuming guy who was, quote, willing to do whatever, end quote, for the president, and as a result, the two of them became very close. Now, as I've mentioned on the channel before, I was the aide to the commander of the U.S. Naval Air Force's Atlantic for about 9 months. I was yanked out of being an F-14 training squadron instructor and put into the job of aide when the guy ahead of me was fired. Now, at first, I was completely overwhelmed. This was a very foreign atmosphere. But once I got my head above water, I realized I had a unique sort of power. I was the gatekeeper that even officers several ranks above me had to go through to get to the admiral. It was sort of heady stuff. But I was warned by the executive assistant, a captain, two things. One was, don't wear the stars, meaning don't imagine that you have the same power that the 3-star admiral does. And the second was, the loop, the aiguillette that I wore as the aide, comes off. And that meant that if I did things that angered people, they'd come after me once I didn't have the job and went back to the fleet. So I heeded both of those pieces of advice. But at the most basic level, I can relate to the power that Senior Chief Nauta felt as the president's valet. Nauta was the only one of the two White House valets who left Washington, D.C. for Trump's personal residence at Mar-a-Lago in Florida after he lost the 2020 election. Among his duties as directed by President Trump during the move in January of 2020 was to ensure boxes of the president's papers made it on the trucks going from D.C. to Florida. Those boxes would come to play a huge role in Nauta's life in the months ahead. Things started to get complicated in May of 2021 when the National Archives and Records Administration, which is responsible for archiving presidential records, started demanding that President Trump turn over the records that he kept during his presidency. The National Archives repeatedly warned Trump through his reps that they would refer the matter to the Department of Justice if he didn't comply. In September of 2021, Senior Chief Nauta retired from the U.S. Navy to work as a personal aide to Trump at Mar-a-Lago. By the time of his retirement, he'd received numerous service-related awards and commendations, including 5 Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals and 7 Good Conduct Medals. He was put on the payroll of Save America, a political action committee with a salary of $135,000 a year, which is basically double what he was making as a Senior Chief Petty Officer. And as an E7 with 20 years of service, he also gets about $30,000 a year in retirement pay. Nauta's duties didn't change much serving a former president instead of a president. He was at Trump's side at all times, and Trump depended on him to get from place to place and to meet with the right people wherever they were, perhaps even more so than when they were in the White House together because there were considerably fewer people in the inner circle. His official title was executive assistant, but informally he was known as Trump's body man. The chain of events that follows is taken from the grand jury indictment that was unsealed on June 8, 2023. Senior Chief Nauta was involved in moving the boxes around Mar-a-Lago several times from the spring until late fall of 2021. between storage rooms and ballrooms and bathrooms, as well as loading some boxes on a truck to be taken by airplane to the Trump residence in Bedminster, New Jersey. But it appears that it wasn't until December 7, 2021, that he became aware that some of the boxes contained classified documents. Nauta found several of Trump's boxes fallen and their contents spilled onto the floor of a storage room. He texted a fellow Trump employee a photo of splayed-out records, some of them marked confidential and secret, along with the message, quote, "I opened the door and found this," end quote. Let me note at this point that while all sailors are introduced to the basics of the classification system in boot camp, not all ratings are created equal with respect to an in-depth understanding of the sensitivity of classified information and how to handle it. In general, sailors who work in intelligence centers or maintain weapons systems develop a greater respect and appreciation for these things than cooks or other support ratings like legalman, religious program specialist, or musician. Nauta and the other Trump employee took the boxes from the storage room to Trump's residence for the former president to review. On January 17, 2022, Nauta loaded 15 boxes on a truck for delivery to the National Archives. The National Archives reviewed the contents of those boxes and determined that they contained 197 documents with classification markings, 98 secret and 30 top secret. Some of them also had SCI markings, which indicates the highest levels of sensitivity. The National Archives then turned the boxes over to the Department of Justice. On March 30th, sensing that former President Trump hadn't fully complied with the National Archive request for all relevant records and that he was still in possession of highly classified documents, the FBI opened a criminal investigation. A month later, a federal grand jury also opened an investigation. On May 11th, that grand jury issued a subpoena to the Trump office requiring the production of all documents with classification markings still in possession, custody, or control of Trump. On May 22nd, a security camera captured Nauta removing a box from one of the storage rooms at Mar-a-Lago. 5 days later, Nauta voluntarily sat down with an FBI interviewer. Here's a transcript of part of that interview. Question: Are you aware of any boxes being brought to his home, his suite? Answer: No. All right, so to the best of your knowledge, you're saying that those boxes that you brought onto the truck, first time you ever laid eyes on them, was just the day when Trump employee 2 needed you to take them? Answer: Correct. Question: Do you have any information that could help us understand, like where they were kept, how they were kept, were they secured, were they locked, something that makes the intelligence community feel better about these things, you know? Answer: I wish I could tell you. I don't know. I honestly just don't know. And then the last answer that Nauta gave that the indictment says was false was the answer to the question, so you didn't know, had no idea how they got there before? And Nauta answered no. Then on May 30th, Trump allegedly called Nauta and told him to move 64 boxes out of a storage room to his office in anticipation of one of his lawyers coming down to review that the grand jury subpoena had been fully complied with. On June 2nd, the attorney went to Mar-a-Lago to conduct the search for documents to hand over to the grand jury. That lawyer was not told by Trump or Nauta about the additional 64 boxes that had been removed. Nauta escorted the lawyer to the storeroom for about 2.5 hours, watched him conduct the search of the boxes there, during which the lawyer found 38 documents with classification markings. Then the lawyer removed those documents and placed them into a red weld folder. Then they met with former President Trump in the Mar-a-Lago dining room and told him what the attorney had found. Trump asked if there was anything, quote unquote, really bad in the folder, and according to the attorney's statement given to the grand jury later, implied that if there was, the attorney should throw it away in his hotel room when he got back to it. After the meeting with Trump, the attorney contacted the DOJ and requested that an FBI agent meet him at Mar-a-Lago the next day so he could turn over the documents in the folder. The attorney also asked a colleague to come out to Mar-a-Lago to certify that the grand jury subpoena had been complied with, and that colleague, a female attorney, agreed, even though she had not been present when the search was conducted. That second attorney submitted a certification that stated that the search was conducted in accordance with the subpoena and that all relevant documents were being handed over. At the same time, former President Trump claimed to the DOJ and FBI that he was, quote unquote, an open book. The FBI wasn't convinced. They also had evidence, including audio and video files and former lawyer testimony, that suggested Trump was willfully holding documents that he knew were highly classified. So on August 22, 2022, they executed a court-authorized search warrant, also known as a raid of Mar-a-Lago. The search netted 102 documents with classified markings in Trump's office and the storage room. The specific classifications of the documents break down as follows. You can see from this list that's contained in the indictment that they're top secret, SCI, secret no foreign, which means no foreign countries can see them, as well as secret that can be shared with our allies. Overall, these are 31 highly classified and sensitive documents. Just over 9 months after that search, former President Donald Trump and retired Senior Chief Petty Officer Walt Nauta were indicted by the United States District Court, Southern District of Florida. Trump faces 37 counts, 5 of them along with Nauta. Nauta faces 6 counts, 1 of them by himself. Trump and Nauta appeared before the court in Miami on June 13, 2023, where they were arrested and fingerprinted. At the initial appearance, both of them pled not guilty. The judge told them they could not communicate about the case, but no other restrictions were imposed. After the processing, Trump appeared at Versailles, a local Cuban restaurant, with Nauta at his side performing his duties as usual, orchestrating photo ops and keeping the former president on schedule. The charges Senior Chief Nauta faces are serious. Each one of the counts comes with upwards of 20 years in prison and a $25,000 fine. Over my 20 years in the U.S. Navy, I learned to trust and respect the senior enlisted professionals I had the pleasure of working with, and I never want to see a fellow sailor in this sort of predicament. But while allowing that accused are innocent until proven guilty in this country, reading the facts as alleged in the indictment, it seems that Walt Nauta's hierarchy of loyalties got, let's say, out of whack. This historic trial, the first to involve a former president of the United States, is going to take a long time, no doubt. But at the end of it, we'll know whether the justice system finds Senior Chief Nauta a victim of circumstance or a willing accomplice who hazarded national security with his conduct. All right, that'll do it for this episode. If you're not already a subscriber, become one so you don't miss anything going forward. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon below, or become a patron at patreon.com/WardCarroll. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again very soon.